Spider-Man.
Guys, we're going to be chatting today about Daredevil Born Again, episode 4, which was incredible. We're also going to talk about the Punisher's standalone special presentation that's coming to Disney Plus, which will be kind of in the vein of Werewolf by Night, probably about an hour long. And we don't have to get into it right now because I want to talk about Daredevil first, but I really wish they would have gone and given Punisher maybe another continuation of his series or even a movie. But let's go ahead and discuss Daredevil Born Again, episode 4. Starting, Aiden, what did you think about this episode in terms of just emotion, and how did it work at all for you?
This episode was incredible. This episode gave us Daredevil fans everything we wanted and hoped for. It really brought back the essence of the previous other seasons. We got to see Wilson Fisk back in his raw form, see how dangerous and scary and evil he actually is while he's putting on this persona of being like this good guy, this new mayor who's supposed to be protecting the city when he's just getting back to his normal tendencies.
Yeah.
We got to see Charlie Cox. We got to see Daredevil back in his raw
Same
form of being just a flat out amazing lawyer, being able to have amazing dialogues between him and other lawyers, him and other people in the criminal justice system, whether it be a victim or another lawyer.
Yeah.
Things like that, just being able to see all those really good moments, as well as being able to spend time with who else do we talk with in the episode? Like
so many people. I think, you know, what this show or what this episode in particular has done is, like you said, tied us back to that original series. I mean, something that fans loved so much from the Netflix series was the courtroom scenes in combination with the Daredevil action. I mean, you kind of get both sides of the coin. You have a serious law-abiding citizen who's doing things by the book, and then you have his alter ego during the nighttime being a vigilante, doing things kind of in the gray area of the law. And we're at a place right now where Matt is maybe thinking twice about his decision to stop being Daredevil. I mean, you kind of brought it up already, but Wilson Fisk and Matt Murdock are trying to be who they're not right now. They're trying to be different. Can they change? I mean, I talked about it in my breakdown. One of the biggest themes of this episode is not only forgiveness, you know, with Wilson and Adam, which we will get into, this whole idea of, you know, can you let things go in the past? Can you change? We see Matt Murdock, who's wanted to just be a lawyer now and leave the Daredevil persona behind after Foggy's death, but it's not working for him. And vice versa, you have Wilson Fisk, who is leaving the crime boss life behind, but you can see in this time where he's not in control, these gangs in the Red Hook district are kind of going at each other. He's not there to facilitate anything because he's putting on this persona of being a public official now, which I think, of course, in his deepest wishes wants to do what's best for New York City, but as we've seen time and time again, his methods are questionable, and there's a moral gray area.
And what do you think about the fact that Heather's like this moral fulcrum between Wilson and Charlie? I keep calling him Charlie.
Yeah.
And Matt Murdock, she's creating this character of she doesn't even realize that she's this, like I said, fulcrum between both of them. And at the same time, they're kind of both going through their own transformations to become the person that they really are. Back to to how scary of an individual Wilson is and how dangerous of an individual Matt is, and seeing how she's playing in both those roles.
I think this definitely ties into what the original series was supposed to be before they decided to reshoot the first episode and go in a different direction by canonizing the Netflix series. Bringing Frank Castle, the Punisher, back. He was supposed to be coming back originally in that first draft, but news and rumors have been out this past week suggesting that John Bernthal, when he came back originally for this role, did not like the direction that Frank was going in, and he walked. He didn't want to do this show because he didn't agree with what the character was going to be doing. And, you know, after that creative overhaul, he came back, likes where the story's going, and that makes me very happy. But to add to your point, I think the stuff with Heather being that fulcrum, was from the original series. I think having this not love triangle, but this triangle of relationships between Matt and Heather and Wilson Fisk, as well as Heather and Muse. I mean, we got a little bit of a start on Muse in this week's episode, which I assume we're getting 2 episodes next week. I think we're really going to dive into Muse and his psyche and what he's all about, because we've seen very little of him. And I think Heather, again, being that middle piece, I don't know if she's going to survive this season, because I mean, she's involved with too many villainous characters, and also is that that piece of support that Matt really needs right now, because he doesn't have Karen, he doesn't have Foggy. So putting her in harm's way, it seems like a sure way to, you know, tell a good story.
What I do want to ask is, despite the fact that we're about to get this Frank Castle series off to the side of what we were supposed to get in the next Punisher season, do you think that we're going to continue to get more intimate time with Frank throughout this season, or do you think he's going to be a side character? Because despite the fact that we had a really important scene with him in this past episode, I can't help but think that that was a small part of actually what was going on in this episode. And it almost felt like it was one of those things where it wasn't going to continue long term throughout the season. Yeah,
I do think we're going to see Frank again. I mean, not just because I've seen set photos of him and Matt fighting, you know, in their costumes. I think that's going to be something the fans are going to go crazy over, especially, you know, Frank looks really disheveled right now. We don't know why, per se. They don't really get into that, and maybe this Punisher special presentation that they're going to be doing on Disney Plus will dive into that, and I hope it does. But Frank has been, you know, this hermit recently, clearly dealing with a lot. He's taking a lot of medicine. He's got a lot of weapons, and I think this was a good starting point for reintroducing Frank, and I think that scene between him and Matt is something that fans are going to talk about for a very long time, similar with their first scene in, I think, the original Netflix series of them on the rooftop, where Matt is all chained up. I think this scene from this episode is in contention with that for being one of the best dialogues throughout this entire character's series history. But yeah, we're going to see more of Frank this season. The question is how much, and if they're giving him his own little project on the side, does this maybe feel like a little bit of an advertisement for that? I don't know yet. I think Frank does belong in Daredevil full time. I think, you know, the stories that we've gotten with his character in the original series and so far in this show have been well warranted and worth the time. They're not just like, oh, look, it's Punisher, stay tuned for the next show. He's actually involved in the story, and I think he's going to get more involved in these next couple episodes, maybe even next week's, since we're getting 2. There were set photos that show him with the haircut. You know, that's gonna go crazy when
him looking good.
Yeah, it's gonna go crazy when we see him pull up in his Punisher outfit with his haircut and like a minigun or something.
Now, what is this special presentation? Because I haven't heard anything personally, and I know that this is something you brought up to me, but I wanted us to kind of delve into that.
Yeah, so this is 100% confirmed by Marvel Studios. They have posted about it. It is in the works, a special presentation, and I don't think you saw Werewolf by Night, correct? You haven't seen that?
I think we talked about that I need to watch
Yes,
that,
you definitely do. It's fantastic.
Someone commented saying that I needed to watch it as well.
Yeah, so. 100%. It's really good. I loved it so much. And since I've seen it, and I know it's the only Marvel presentation that they've released, it's about like an hour and a half long, basically a short movie, or an hour to an hour and a half long. It tells a really concise story in a short period of time. And I've been thinking about all the different things they could do with Frank Castle in this. And of course, like I said at the beginning of this, I'd rather have a movie or another series, just because Jon Bernthal is so good at this as this character.
Yeah.
And you know, there were complaints about the original Punisher series being kind of not mid, but lesser quality than, of course, Daredevil, which was 10 out of 10, especially with the second season. The first season people loved a lot. Second season people were a little less interested in.
I disagree with that highly.
And that's personal opinion.
That's kind of wild. I did not know that.
Yeah.
I thought people were on the kind of fence of saying that it's borderline just as good as Daredevil, or feels like a continuation of it in some sense. But that's just me. I mean, I know it's a completely different style of show. It's more street level than Daredevil, but I'm surprised to hear that, actually.
Yeah, so that's been the sentiment for the past several years since it released. But I think, you know, and everybody has their own opinions on it. I think that it's it's good enough to warrant the Punisher coming back. And of course, it's the Punisher. He's a very important character, and we would love to see him interact with other Marvel heroes, such as who he appeared first in comic books: Spider-Man, Daredevil, Kingpin, any other Marvel hero. I think it'd be a great collaboration, and I think doing a special presentation where you have an hour or an hour and a half to really sell us on the Punisher as a character again and tell a good story. The rumor is that John Bernthal himself is actually in the writer's room. He's taking a big role in not only playing this character, but creating this story that they're going to be telling. And I think that's important because, like I said, he didn't want to come back originally when he saw the script and the story that they were going to use for Daredevil Born Again. He didn't think his character Frank would do those things or talk that way or act a certain way. And it's nice to see that he has that power as an actor with star power to say no to things and not just be forced to pump out a product for Disney or whatever it is. He cares about this character, and knowing that he's going to be writing this next installment in his story is really relieving in the sense that we're probably going to get something very, very special.
Now, are we going to be getting this special feature as like a final continuation of Punisher, or is this going to be something where it's like, hey, this is reintroducing him to the fans that, for instance, with this new series, a lot of the fans aren't familiar with his backstory if they haven't watched the Punisher or the previous Daredevil seasons? Is this going to be something that we lead into maybe another season down the line, you think? Or is this something that is going to just wrap up the Punisher and we're not going to get as much alone time with him per se as like we did in the previous seasons?
I think they're going to use this as a way to soft reboot the character. I think
that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think that the first 2 seasons of Punisher are going to be canon. I mean, considering Daredevil it's in the same universe. I think it's going to still exist. I don't think they're going to reference the first 2 seasons as much as they're referencing the original series of Daredevil. I think they're going to try and maybe go full Punisher now. You know, there were some very brutal scenes in that original series, especially with what was his buddy's name again?
Micro?
No, his
Billy Russo.
Russo, yeah. The scene of him with the glass.
So
I mean,
awesome.
I think they're going to do more of that stuff. I mean, we've seen and heard so many F-bombs already in Daredevil Born Again. I mean, it's nice to have just a very rated R TV show again that's not afraid to pull the punches. I mean, with Muse coming back or, you know, coming into the fold, I think they're going to shock us with the brutality of it. And I think Frank Castle embodies that, and them doing a special presentation is going to allow them to just let him free. Do whatever he wants to tell a very important story. There's so much source material from the comic books that they could pull from. They've got War Journal. They've got Venom and Punisher did stuff together. I mean, there's so many different things
That's a weird crossover.
Yeah, there's so many different things they could pull from. And in this wide world of the MCU now, where they can use any character that they want, I think we're again in for something very special.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to talk about with Daredevil Born Again episode 4 is the weirdness with Wilson Fisk and Vanessa. I think there's still a lot we don't know yet about the characters. We see them obviously in therapy sessions with Heather, and again, great having Heather be that middle piece because she relates to all the characters, even though she's a very new character.
And then all these characters don't know that she's kind of that fulcrum.
Right, and Matt even mentions it, or Heather mentions it in this recent episode. She's like, I've got these clients that are, pretty famous, and Matt kind of pushes a little bit, and he's like, oh, who is it? And she's like, oh, I can't tell you. The moment he finds out is going to be awesome, and what he's going to do with that information, realizing that maybe Heather is in harm's way more than he would want. And it might bring up maybe some PTSD from Matt. The whole reason he stopped being Daredevil is because someone he loved died. And he doesn't want that to happen again, of course. So having Heather be this close to Wilson Fisk, who in some respects is kind of responsible for creating Bullseye and causing Foggy's death, I think that will worry him. And I think that's a dramatic moment that we're all excited to see. What's your opinion on Vanessa right now? She's very slithery, kind of like sneaky. I don't know what her deal is fully yet.
See, here's the thing. I think that there's a lot more behind the scenes that we haven't got information on. I mean, Wilson did leave. She had started almost this whole new life as this crime boss and like this leader of all the different crime in the area for drug trafficking and just
whatever.
There's so much that we don't know about her dealings since Wilson left, and now it almost feels like one of those things where Wilson's coming back from his like deployment, and now
his sabbatical,
and he's trying to become this like man in the relationship again and get back his wife when he left her, and she saw this as, hey, I'm starting a new life, I'm starting a new chapter. And when they're in these therapy sessions, you can see Heather try and pull this out of him, and he's so reluctant to and so angered at what all Vanessa had been doing prior to him leaving, thinking that she would just like wait around. It's sad to say, like, that's not reality, and that's also it's hard for like us as fans to not empathize with Wilson, because we see how upset he is and how sad he is, but you also know how evil he is at the same time. So
and that's just good writing.
And like for Vanessa, like it's hard for me to sum up what I think about her right now, because part of the thing is we're dealing with a mystery of like what actually her intentions are. Is she trying to manipulate Wilson into doing something for her? Is she trying to get her, or is she actually trying to get her husband back, or is she just trying to like have a one up on like above him to say, hey, like I'm willing to I'm willing to like understand where you're coming from if you do this for me. I don't know, because also like is it David her significant other?
Adam. Yeah.
Adam, like we get to see kind of like Adam for the first time at the end of this episode, and like I don't want to spoil this for everyone that hasn't watched it yet. But
you can say it. It's been long enough.
Spoiler
alert.
Yeah. So basically, Wilson has her hostage. Him hostage.
Not Vanessa.
But does he actually? But like when you see that, does Vanessa know what's going on? I mean, she even gets a little bit reluctant when Heather asked them in this therapy session, have you both seen Adam?
Yeah.
And they're both like respond at the same time, like, what do they say? They're like,
I don't know where
he is, or I have no idea. But it almost felt too like perfect for them to say that, where maybe, yes, obviously Wilson knows where he is, but maybe Vanessa also knows where he is and is trying to get that leg up on him so she can help Adam like in some capacity. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's the mystery.
Personally, I think Vanessa has no idea. I think that Wilson is still trying to put this mask on, that he is a changed person and he's not doing anything evil anymore. I think he really believes that he is making a difference in this city as mayor. I mean, they show you the pothole scene. They show you what he wants to do good for this city, but that evil side of him is still there, and they show it perfectly at the end of the episode, because Wilson assures Vanessa, I have no idea where Adam is. I have no idea what happened to him. And even in a prior episode, Vanessa says, don't kill him. And Wilson replies, I'm not that man anymore.
Instead, he's holding him hostage.
Right. So
and starving him and probably like terrorizing him in some capacity. I mean, you saw his like bloody hands, and whether he's doing that to himself or Wilson's doing something to him, like he's eating a plate of food in front of him while he's sitting in a jail cell.
Now that you mention it, and I didn't even think about this, because in prior episodes we saw, and they cut to it many times, Wilson's bloody hands. And we're like, are we going to get a flashback and see why? Like, why are they harping on this so much?
Yeah.
And it's probably because he's beaten the hell out of Adam.
Yeah.
And now it explains it. And I think that's one of the best things about this show so far. It realizes that the audience is intelligent. It doesn't have to show us everything right away. We can put two and two together, and I think that's good writing, because once you give the audience credit for intelligence and we're able to put the pieces together, it's just so much more rewarding to see what happens with these characters next. I mean, that's why I'm so interested in this, is because Wilson is, again, putting up this masquerade of being a good guy, but we know it's still Wilson Fisk. He's still the kingpin. There's going to be a boiling point where he boils over and he's going to go back to his old ways. Vice versa, it's yin and yang. Same with Matt Murdock. I mean, as this episode is ending, we literally see both of them reverting back to their old ways. Matt seeing all of his Daredevil helmets, which were sick.
Yeah, so
and
cool.
I will probably only see the red one in this season, but spoiler alert, there have been set photos of season 2 that show maybe a different color, maybe the black suit, which will be incredible. We saw
Isn't there a yellow one?
Yeah, we saw the yellow one in She-Hulk.
Okay.
Yeah, which was his first comic book appearance suit. But Matt's going back here. He's like the system, I've followed it, but not only are criminals being screwed over by the system with that guy who stole the cereal, not only is that guy being screwed over, even though he is a criminal, but the innocent. We have Hector's niece. Even though Hector was cleared of all charges, it's kind of Matt's fault what happened to him. He outed him as White Tiger. I mean, he's done everything he can in the system, and going back to that conversation he has with Frank, at that point I think he realizes not only does he miss Foggy as a best friend and as a person, but as a lawyer, as a good human being. I mean, the amount of times that Foggy came to the rescue from Matt's court cases in the original series, it shows they were two peas in a pod. And Matt can't do this by himself, especially without being Daredevil. And I think he's realizing that now. Same with Fisk, realizing I'm trying to be better, but maybe that's just my nature.
Yeah, and that's why I love the dialogue when Matt is at the prison or at the jail and he's talking with this client about how he's trying to get him a little bit of probation, but he's probably going to end up with jail time. Yeah. Matt ends up going to talk with the clerk, and there's this great dialogue between them where it's almost a bit like flirty, and you got like Matt trying to actually like pull some strings to get this guy off the hook, but not really realizing why he's so upset about his charges. And then when he goes back into the meeting room with the guy, I don't remember his name, but he gets kind of like a kick in the gut, like, hey, this is someone's real life. Like, this is why he needs to not be in jail. This is why he needs to be on probation. He lost Social Security. He can't get food stamps. He's eating.
What do you expect him to do?
He's stealing to survive. And I think that was awesome to see for Matt, because it really, I mean, yes, it's getting us back to the major point of him becoming Daredevil again, but he's realizing that all of his efforts of preaching, I'm going to go by the system, he's getting knocked down over and over and over again with Hector's death, with this guy getting incarcerated again for reasons that really, I mean, yes, it's a crime, but you have to look at the bigger picture. It's really giving Matt an excuse to become Daredevil again and get back to his roots of why he's doing this in the first place. Yes, he doesn't have to become like a killer, like the Punisher, but he can make a real difference outside of the normal system. And yes, that's going to push Wilson over the edge, because then you have a vigilante, and that's the biggest thing Wilson does not want, is these vigilantes.
100%. And I think that one other thing that was a great revelation in this episode, or a great opening to a mystery, was at that precinct when Matt finds the detective who he beat the crap out of in the apartment, as well as, when Hector was getting beat up on the subway station. Matt listens to his heartbeat, and the dude's telling the truth. Yeah. He did not have anything to do with Hector's death. Now, that's the question. Who did? And
it all wraps back to you thinking it's Fisk, but like, how does Fisk even...
Right.
Like, he knew what was going on, so is there more that Fisk isn't telling us?
I think there is. I think there is, because when Hector's death was happening in last week's episode, playing over that scene was Fisk talking about anti-vigilantism. And I think maybe Fisk himself has his own, pod of dirty cops tying into the police commissioner situation that he had in the first two episodes. I think it's all going to wrap together, and I think he probably did have something to do with Hector's death, even if this crooked cop that was responsible for him being in jail didn't have anything to do with it. I think that's fascinating, and it's another mystery to open up, because all of these people are pretending to be the Punisher, and Frank clearly is like, oh, these are just fanboys. Like, they wish they could be a quarter of the man that I am.
Yeah.
But maybe, who knows, to tie it back to what we were talking about earlier, maybe that's a point of contention in the Punisher special. Maybe it's going to be Frank going around putting all of these guys down who think they can be Punishers. There's only one. There's only one. There was another thing that I wanted to talk about with this episode, and I can't remember exactly what it was. Who was the guy? What's his name? He is kind of like the kiss ass for Fisk.
The
Daniel? Is his name Daniel?
Yeah.
Part of me, and this is just me thinking Fisk is like the smartest man alive. Part of me thinks that Fisk is the one who I know Daniel was at this party with BB Urich and kind of leaked the information that way. But what if this was all a plot for Fisk to, have that information leak out and have Daniel feel guilty for it? And then you have the scene where Daniel is so just pouring his heart out to his loyalty to Wilson Fisk. And he thinks he's going to fire him. And Fisk is like, you can't buy that loyalty. That you are someone who's going to stay here. You're not going to lose your job.
Yeah.
Fisk, time and time again, as we've seen in the previous seasons, takes somebody under their wing, and it never ends up good for them.
Yeah.
It never ends up good for them. And a comparison that I mentioned in my review and what I've seen other people discuss is I'm seeing a lot of similarities with this Daniel Fisk relationship to Vic and Oz from the Penguin show. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I thought that was a great comparison because it was also one of those things where you really see that father-son relationship, but there's also the fact that Wilson and Oz are literally threatening to kill these kids, and they're giving their undying commitment to them, and they're getting wrapped up in this world where they don't really know what they're getting themselves involved in. Mm-hmm. You really see Daniel kind of put in this like monologue of saying like how his undying commitment to Wilson is so important to him that he's willing to kind of give up his own morals to do so. And I think that we really get to see Wilson kind of transform his tactics and manipulation here, because you get to see him kind of calm down and not actually lash out too much on Daniel. And by doing that, he's almost getting a better asset to his syndicate. I mean, I think that he also has the ability to now use Daniel in a capacity where he's going to be even more influential to his campaign and getting BB to report on things that he needs him to report on for his own personal vendetta. So obviously BB is taking everything that Daniel said at face value. I mean, she put it on the news. Well, now what else is Fisk going to feed to Daniel that might not be true and then end up on the news to boost Fisk's persona amongst the media?
Or put somebody else down. I mean, you nailed it. I think this is exactly what he's going to be doing here. And Daniel's desperation to keep this job and be loyal to Fisk, he's going to use that to his full advantage. And I think that's a really interesting theory on what Fisk is going to do, because now because he has Daniel on his pocket, and because BB is taking advantage of Daniel, he basically has a leg up over BB now.
Yeah.
This reporter who's supposed to be against Fisk in the race is now not directly, but in his back pocket, which
without
is
her even knowing.
Exactly.
And that's basically what Fisk. He wanted to do with Ben Urich as well. I mean, is the fate of Ben Urich going to also lead to BB Urich? Like, it's possible, but I think that he's using the fact that she's so young and not knowing kind of the way of the world and who Fisk is. I mean, he killed her uncle, so it's like there's a lot that we have to unpack there, and I think that's an awesome little side story to really see.
Yeah, I think it's another thread of this show that is just intriguing. Like we don't know how this is going to end. Again, another moment where Fisk is probably going to tell BB Urich, or BB Urich is going to find out that Fisk killed her uncle. Yeah. That's another one we're just waiting to see, and the tension is rising and rising. And now with this is kind of the start of that, the start of the flame to light this whole candle of calamity between Fisk's mayoral campaign, Matt returning as Daredevil, the Punisher being involved with the crooked cops. It's all ramping up very quickly. And, I've seen some people say there's not enough action in this show so far. I can see that 100%. But here's the thing. Here's my opinion. Daredevil has never just been about the action. Half of the reason why I love Daredevil so much is because we have the duality. We have this blind lawyer, which is like brilliant in itself, with this kind of religious background, and using that in a unconventional hero way to fight the system in the right way and in the wrong way. It's what we've all loved about this show. And I think all this action that we're wanting is coming very soon, especially we're getting 2 episodes next week. So I think Matt's going to fully put the mask back on.
Yeah.
But it's just looking so good. And I'm so happy that it is what it is.
Yeah. And I personally would say I really wish people would put more emphasis into these monologues and dialogues that these characters have as more influential than the action. Personally, like, yes, the action is fun. Yes, the action is intriguing to watch how how amazing of a fighter like people like the Punisher and Daredevil are, or even Bullseye. But I don't think that's really what this show is becoming. I think it's more of a political based show where you have these dialogues between people that is so manipulative, the way Wilson can work these people and kind of get them to do what he wants to do. It's almost more enjoyable for me than the actual fight scenes that we get.
That's totally fair. I mean, that the scene between Frank and Matt,
incredible.
I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of action there, a little bit of tension, but it's really the drama and the emotion that carries Daredevil. And gosh, I just can't wait for more. 2 episodes next week. I don't know what we're going to get. I think probably this next episode 5, we'll probably get Muse. We'll probably get a ton of Muse. I think we're getting in the point where we need a main villain moving forward. We've laid all the groundwork. We've seen Muse in the background with the spray paint. We've seen
that cutscene at the end of this episode. Like,
he's gonna have to be front and center in the next couple episodes and be the main reason why Matt comes back. And maybe it ties into Fisk. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and shift gears real quick. We talked a little bit about the Punisher special. Is there any specific storyline that you, or just direction of the character that you'd like to see Frank Castle go in this special presentation?
Well, I'm a little interested to see how they'll take this, because part of Frank's motive is that he's just trying to avenge his family in most of Daredevil season 1, 2, and 3, and then you get into the Punisher where then you have him trying to do the same thing for Micro, and Micro's trying to get back his family. Now I want to know like what the Punisher's motives are. Like, yes, it's still his family, and even in this episode we get him saying like every time I close my eyes or hear, well, he says something about hearing his son.
Yeah.
Obviously those are the main motives, but I feel like there has to be more now. Like, are we going to get a relationship with Karen in this season?
I hope so.
Where then hopefully, God forbid, something doesn't happen to her and he leads down this path of kind of becoming unhinged again and being this almost criminal in some sense. I want to see like what really is motivating him. I mean, it's sad to say, but we can't really keep relying on this like motive of, oh, he's just doing it to his family. Well, his family's been dead. We've kind of gone through that story
multiple times.
That's not that it's not relevant. It's just what is causing him to want to be this powerhouse character again. Like, is there more to it that we need?
Yeah, like this show, the Punisher needs to evolve. It needs to be. We need to respect and include the source material, what we've had before. But like this show has done, the character needs to evolve. We need to put him in new situations. We need new villains. We need new characters. And like you said, we need new motives. To do all of that in just an hour and a half special, I think they can do it. Or an hour special, I think they can do it. Just seeing, and again, you need to really watch it, but how Werewolf by Night was so self-contained. It had one goal in mind for the hour plus that it was on. I think the Punisher needs to do the same thing. I think we need to tell a nice short story that changes or evolves the direction of the character. So when we see him again, we have this story in his wheelhouse where we can, springboard off there to where it goes in the future. I think them doing a Punisher special is a very smart move in terms of business, just because the buzz about Daredevil and all the Daredevil related characters is so big right now. I think a report came out this week that viewership of the original Daredevil Netflix series on Disney Plus went up 153%, which is huge. I mean, that means people are loving this, or they're going back and watching that original series so they can, be filled in. I mean, it's part of the MCU now, and one of the biggest things about the MCU is you've got a lot of homework, you've got a lot of stuff to watch, but watching that stuff is rewarding. So
and even like just the dialogue between Matt and Frank in this episode, like you get to hear Frank call Matt like Red, and like what else does he call him? He says
counselor.
Like these are things that he has been calling him throughout the first 3 seasons, and like you really get to, you don't know why unless you've gone back and watched those things.
It's rewarding when you pick up on those things.
Well, because he knows Matt so well.
Yeah,
he knows him better than, I mean, even I would even say Fisk, even though Fisk seems like he's got to know him pretty like well. I don't know. Well,
yeah, I think one of the last times, and we can talk about the Punisher for a couple more minutes about that scene, because the last time we saw Frank and Matt together, Frank did not know Matt was Daredevil. There was a moment in the courtroom where Frank kind of gives that look to him when he hears Matt talk, that he's like, this guy might be Daredevil, but clearly he knows that now. There's clearly been plenty of time, several years at least, from the ending of Daredevil season 3 to Born Again. We see that, so maybe the Punisher special presentation will be a flashback. Maybe we'll find out how Frank got where he is in this bunker, hunkered down. I don't know if I'd like that. I kind of would prefer to move forward with the story, and maybe fill in those gaps during that, but also just tell something current, because I think a lot of MCU fans are kind of sick of going backwards. We're ready to move forwards and wrap up the multiverse saga and get to the next thing. And that's another question. Like, with this Punisher special presentation, after that we've got Avengers, and they are having to pick and choose what characters to show in that movie. I mean, there's over probably 50 plus Marvel characters that they could pull in for that movie, and I don't see them putting 50 characters in that movie.
Yeah.
Do you think Frank Castle, do you think there's any room? I think for Daredevil, I think there definitely is a small role for him in Avengers. But I'm a little not concerned, but I'm questioning if Frank makes the team or even plays a role in it.
So 2 things. I want to go back first to the point about Frank's past of how he gets to this point.
Yeah.
I think that if they did do this for the special feature, that it wouldn't be a bad move, however, because think about what they've done with the backstory of Fisk, what they've done with the backstory of Matt, Karen, like all these things that are just great episodes in the past few seasons. Like, they've really held up their end of the bargain of giving them amazing backstories. Yeah. I think they could do that. Now, as to your point about him about Frank moving on into like an Avengers role, I guess if we're kind of taking the same idea of the Avengers in the past, no, I don't think he would mesh well. I think he's
on his own.
He's so much more street level than even like Spider-Man, and I think even Spider-Man sometimes is like a stretch to put in there, or even like Ant-Man. Like, they're gonna have to stretch his abilities to such a capacity that it almost might even feel like the way we do with Hawkeye. Like, it's not enough to be an event. It's not enough for his abilities aren't enough for him to be an Avenger, and it might fit better with like the Thunderbolts, like where it's almost like if we can really sell the Thunderbolts in the upcoming movie, he might fit well into that era of people.
Yeah.
He's also like, all those people are also kind of like broken, and he kind of fits that mold. He's not a god. He's not Thor. Like, could you imagine seeing Thor next to the Punisher? Like,
it would be sick.
It doesn't make sense.
It would be sick.
But they would have to modify his abilities in some capacity.
So, to a certain extent, I agree with you, because, we look at, the Punisher versus Doctor Doom. That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
The power is just too great. However, in Infinity War, you got Bucky, which, Bucky's a super soldier and he's got a metal arm, but Bucky just uses guns most of the time.
But he's also one of the Thunderbolts now. That's
true. But we do have, Hawkeye, he doesn't have superpowers. He's just a great shot, which, that's kind of the superpower in its own right. But I think we're probably not going to see the Punisher in the Avengers. But, I just think back to Infinity War when you see all the aliens invading from Thanos' army, and Bucky's just a guy, and I just see Bucky just mowing them down. I would love to see Frank Castle do that.
But he's not a turning point. Like, you're not gonna have.
Does he belong there?
Yeah, like, he's not. He's doing like at the end of the day, that's not how you end these kind of cataclysmic events. Like, it's people like Thor or
it's the heavy hitters.
Yeah, like Hulk, like
Spider-Man, Doctor Strange.
They're taking out like the cavalry.
Yeah,
you're not taking out Loki.
Yeah,
or someone that's at the top.
Yeah, so to kind of wrap it up, what you said about the teams, we've got the Avengers, of course, which we just discussed. We've got the Thunderbolts. The rumor mill says that we're getting the Midnight Suns, which is like the supernatural group, which would include
like Wanda.
It would maybe include Wanda. Okay. We would have like Doctor Strange. We would have Ghost Rider. We would have Blade. Dane Whitman from the Eternals. He was played by Kit Harington, who played Jon Snow.
Okay.
kind of the more spooky Werewolf by Night. A lot of the scarier, spooky, supernatural characters in that team. We've also got the Defenders, which existed on Netflix with Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Daredevil, Luke Cage, maybe even the Punisher. Maybe they're going to bring back the Defenders. We're in an era now, and then you, of course, think about what's coming next. We have the Fantastic Four. That's another group. We have the X-Men. That's another group. We have X-Force with Daredevil, or with Deadpool. I think they're setting up so many different teams right now. We've got our Guardians of the Galaxy. We've got all of these different sectors and groups of people who are designated to their certain areas. The cosmic stuff, the street level stuff, the Earth protection stuff, Shield, Hydra, all these different factions and groups. And I think that's kind of what they're setting up for the future. We can have our different characters and what's going to happen when these two groups go against each other. I would love to see a rumor that's been out for a while. I would love to see an Avengers versus X-Men movie. I would love to see a Thunderbolts versus Defenders movie or show or something like that. I think we're setting up different factions in Marvel, and I think the Punisher definitely fits into one of them. So could you
say that one of these good groups is going to turn heel?
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. We have the Thunderbolts with that asterisk on the very end of it. Does that mean they're going to rename themselves to the Dark Avengers? The Dark Avengers. It's such a possibility. I think we're in a good spot right now. Thunderbolts is picking up so much more traction than I think they thought it would. It's been reviewing in test screenings extremely positively. Marvel is very happy with it. They've got an amazing film crew, writers, directors, special effects team, cinematographers. People working on that film are top tier, and I think Marvel's very happy with that product, and that's good. They need another win. I personally really enjoyed Captain America 4, but it wasn't the sweeping success that Marvel had hoped for. So, it being good was good, because if it wasn't good, we would have been in that same conversation that we were in within 2021 or 2022, where Marvel's on the downward slope. Marvel's not good anymore. We're in 2025 now. Marvel with Daredevil Born again, with Deadpool and Wolverine, with Robert Downey Jr. coming back and being a bad guy as Doctor Doom. We have so many exciting things. The Fantastic Four. We have so many incredible things to look forward to. The Marvel hype is back in full effect. I'm so excited to see Daredevil being true to that old series, really giving the fans what they want and respecting the fans. And basically, this is kind of a love letter to the fans. Like, hey, we hear you. We're taking your feedback. We are using your feedback, and we're just going to make something not for the money machine, but because the fans love it. Yeah. Guys, down below in the comments, please leave your thoughts on Daredevil Born Again season 4. Daredevil Born Again episode 4. Give me your theories for episodes 5 and 6 that are coming out next Tuesday. I'm really excited. If you have any thoughts on the Punisher special presentation, I'd love to hear them. Aiden, do you have any other final thoughts about this episode, about Daredevil, about the Punisher, that you want to get out there before we wrap it up?
No, I'm just hoping you guys watch, and like you said, leave a comment down below. We're really excited to see what next week holds. Yeah. And yeah, we'll see you guys soon.
See y'all later.